not seen too much of this weekend.
Yep, and Red Green Landfall was a deck I know that Ari Lax played at the Pro Tour. Felt very positively about his deck, but some stumbles in the limited portion and some less than tight play during the constructed rounds upended his tournament, but he felt very strongly that this is one of the best decks, if not the best deck in Standard.
Yeah, so Todd will start on the play with 4-color rally. Of note, so we talked a bit about how our breakdown of the tournament was. 3 rally decks in today too. Todd Stevens is one of them. Red Green Landfall, we did not see it at all yesterday, but it actually came out in force. 7 copies of Red Green Landfall making it in today too. It was one of the top 5 archetypes for the day.
And this is going to be a big test here for Stevens. I think 4-color rally is pretty solid in most of the mid-range removal spell matchups. The game drags out, you generate value along the way, and rally and collected company are backbreakers in those kind of games. Well, how does the deck look when you're just under attack very early on?
Yeah, I mean, and Red Green Landfall is so fast. We see this leopard on turn 1. However, one of the weapons the 4-color rally gets is Sidici's Faithful. That's the 0/4 that can sacrifice to exploit to unsummon a creature. Doing some work right now, as right now the Scythe Leopard not able to attack through it.
Yeah, you see here Melissari trying to sit on his fetch lands a little bit, try to set up some turns here with his landfall creatures, backed up by some fetch lands to be able to push past this blocker.
Right, plays Snapping Gnarlid in addition to Scythe Leopard, so you should expect some land action next turn. But on Todd's side, he gets to set up shop. Here is Jace Vryn's Prodigy as his 2-drop. And the 4-color rally deck is certainly, its mana's tougher, but it is so much more explosive than some of just the 1 or 2 color decks we saw. And for Melissari, as you mentioned, he's slow rolling a fetch land, so here's Wooded Foothills into play. Scythe Leopards and Snapping Gnarlid both attack. Sidici's Faithful blocks, and you see math time already from Melissari. He has a copy of Temur Battle Rage in hand.
So the question now is, does he want to use his Titan Strength to trade up past his DC's Faithful, or is he just going for some sort of combo kill this turn, or at least trying to punch through quite a bit of damage?
All right, so what we have is the fetch land is cracked for Cinderglade, so currently the Leopard is a 3/3 and the Gnarlid is a 4/4. Stevens, to save time, he's going to go ahead and crack that Evolving Wilds. He will have no response here. So the creatures are 7 power at the moment, but you're right, Temur Battle Rage and Titan Strength is so much damage on Melissari's side. See if he just has lethal this turn. He may. Titan Strength is on Scythe Leopard. That will pump it up to a 6/4. He'll scry at the top, and now double strike, so it's a 6/4 trample double strike. It's going to be 12 points of trample, so that's 8 points of damage through the Sidici's Faithful, plus 4 points of damage from the Snapping Gnarlid. It should be 12, knocking Stevens down to a meager 5 life points.
And, this is the 3rd turn of the game.
You
can see this is very different than a lot of the other decks that we see in Standard.
This deck's scary.
They're playing in the middle a little bit. Now, the deck's a little bit more fragile. You're going to fold slightly more often to 1 removal spell or 1 well-timed Radiant Flames.
Okay, so correction here because of the double strike damage happened in pieces. Todd is actually at 8 at the end of the combat. And 4th land for Todd Stevens, and then he'll pass. Yeah, when we had life totals, we'd already shown first strike. So, John, here's a landfall again. Swing with both creatures. It's 5 damage, and Todd will go for Collected Company. And there's so much pressure on Todd just to get this game, to get action fast here.
But if he's able to blunt this onslaught here, he may be able to stabilize the game. And that's the weakness of decks like Red Green Landfall. Once you stop the initial wave, they don't have a lot of recourse other than comboing you out. And Melissari's already used a lot of his pump spells.
Yeah, a lot of great options here for Stevens. We see Grim Haruspex, Nantuko Husk, Elvish Visionary, Zulaport Cutthroat. Could take any combination of those creatures. Let's see what he chooses to do. Looks like it's going to be Nantuko Husk and Zulaport Cutthroat.
I had to imagine Stevens is in the market for a large blocker and some life. And that's what this mixture of cards gets him.
That's going to be the pair of creatures he goes for. So he has those alongside Jace. We'll see what he wants to do as far as blocks are concerned. 8 life points to work with. 1 landfall trigger for the turn. It was not off a fetch land, so he's not worried about another one. So it looks like Husk will block the Gnarlid. Jace will block the Scythe Leopard. Zulaport Cutthroat's going to stay on the table. Before damage, Todd Stevens will go for a loot. Draws another copy of Collected Company. That's a great draw here.
Yeah, starting to gum up the works a little bit here. Trade off a little bit with Melissari's board. Gets the Jace flip, which is very nice. Now you can start plussing the Jace and suppressing another threat.
Yeah, we'll see. So Jace will, after the activation, Jace will flip. And now, rather than losing the Nantuko Husk, Stevens is going to sacrifice Zulaport Cutthroat to the Husk to make it into a 4-4. So Stevens will go up to 9, have a 4-4 in play, and now is ready to let damage happen. We'll see if Melissari has a play.
Yeah, Melissari, you know, he has a Become Immense in hand that he can use to trade off with the Husk. The problem is now with Stevens at 9 and having Jace in play, I think that Melissari needs to keep Become Immense in hand and hope for a punk out. I don't think he can use it to trade off with the board anymore.
Yeah, he needs to find a Battle Rage and then combo kill.
Yeah.
You see, he bins the Gnarlid, plays another Scythe Leopard, but nothing more, just passes the turn as we go back to Todd Stevens. Planeswalker and Husk in play. He'll shrink down a Leopard and pass the turn. Remember, that last loot drew him into Collected Company, so I think we might see that come up.
And Melissari knows that this is a display of strength right now because Stevens had the opportunity to flash back Collected Company if he needed more to gum up the works. If Stevens is saying, no, I'm fine, I can afford to plus Jace here, it means he's got something very good going on in his hand.
Yeah, Melissari trying to establish more of a board. Plays Abbot of Carol Keep. The top card to flip is Wooded Foothills. Land will go into play. Here comes Scythe Leopard. It's currently a 2-2. And another Collected Company from Stevens. Not going to take any damage here. One thing I like about the Rally deck, we talked about how so many decks are creature light here. With 27 creatures, 4-color Rally does not have that problem at all.
And this is the second time we've seen Rally on camera this weekend. We saw it yesterday, just a 2-color build, in the hands of Alan Jackson. What's been very impressive about watching this deck is we've gotten so hung up on Rally combo kills and that being the thing the deck's eventually playing towards. We're seeing a lot of games where this deck is winning without the assistance of Rally, or Rally is just the nail in the coffin, and the deck was kind of in a winning position before that happened.
Absolutely. So for Stevens, his second Rally hits another Zulaport Cutthroat, this time alongside Liliana Heretical Healer. Should be an excellent array of blockers, and if he wants to, he should be able to flip this Liliana, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, he can simply chump block or sack something to Nantuko Husk. A lot of options.
So the chump block is what's going to happen. Zulaport Cutthroat will block Scythe Leopard. That means that Liliana will create a zombie and flip into a Planeswalker. And the block was Husk blocked the Scythe Leopard and sacked the Zulaport Cutthroat, which is why the Scythe Leopard was killed on the turn. And 2 Planeswalkers in play for Todd Stevens on Nantuko Husk. Things are looking up for him. And you're right, even without a Rally, he should just be able to play some sort of value game here.
And with Nantuko Husk in play, and the ability to recur some creatures and gain some light with Zulaport Cutthroat, Stevens may be able to navigate this game to such a place where even the combo of Become Immense and Temur Battle Rage is not enough damage.
Well, that's where he's going to try to get it to. So he starts by playing a Grim Haruspex, then flashes, uses the Liliana ability to reanimate Sidisi's Faithful, unsummon Scythe Leopard, draw a card. Grim Haruspex will let him do that.
So with some assembly required, you can get Jace the Mind Sculptor's plus and minus at the same time in Standard. Takes a little bit of work, but that's a really potent combination. Every single turn, Stevens can minus the Liliana for 1, get back the Faithful, unsummon something, and draw a card off the Haruspex. That's a real engine.
Hey, you'd think that the -1 unsummon would be something that Jace would be doing, not Liliana.
Some assembly required, little bit of effort, but you can get Jace the Mind Sculptor in Standard.
Well, Todd is he drew a land off that Grim Haruspex trigger, so that was enough that now he gets to play Catacomb Sifter. That'll make a Scion. Jace will plus and shrink down Abbot of Carol Keep, and now here comes Nantuko Husk. It's not lethal just yet, but it already represents a lot of damage. No blocks from John. He'll take 2. Go to 14. He still has the Become Immense in hand. There's a chance to Become Immense and Temur Battle Rage. That would be 20 points worth of trample just on its own.
Well, it's a little bit less than that because of the Jace's minus. So I think it works to 16. But Stevens can cover it, I believe, with the blockers he has in play.
Can he draw it? Draws a fetch land. That is no help. Melissari with no play but to recast Scythe Leopard and pass the turn. And now Stevens goes back to work. Once this engine gets going for four-color rally, it is so powerful.
And you can see Stevens is trying to force the issue here. Once he gets Melissari to start chump blocking, the game's over. It's just an issue of getting Melissari down to no creatures in hand.
Jace will go ahead and give flashback to this collected company, and Todd Stevens, he's going to look for more creatures. Here's the third collected company of the game for Todd.
And this is the mixture that Stevens is looking for right now. He can minus the Liliana to get back an unsummon effect. That removes a blocker. The Nantuko Husk, combined with the number of creatures in play, that's lethal. That forces a chump block. And then Melissari's cut off. There's no recovery from this spot.
Well, that collected company found another Catacomb Sifter and another Jace. Both those going to play. That's 3 more creatures. So now, a total of 8 creatures in play for Todd Stevens. Nantuko Husk is lethal. He's going to force some chump blocks. Liliana gets back Sidisi's Faithful. Bounces Scythe Leopard. Todd draws a card.
Who gets some scrying, too, with the Catacomb Sisters.
Yeah, it gets to scry one twice. And you're right, so now once he gets Abbott to chump block, now John can't even draw into the combo kill because he has no creature to attack with. So that seems like it should just be enough on its own. And Todd recognizes it. If there has to be a chump block, he'll swing all eligible attackers. Abbott's going to have to block Nantuko Husk, which is fine. Todd will sack a Scion to pump. Gets a scry off that if he wants. 2 scries, in fact. And the unblocked creatures will deal a healthy 8 damage to John.
You know what the scries are? That's just the Mind Sculptor plussing on yourself.
Right, it's a scry 2. Scry 2.
Got every piece of it.
So we can draw a card, we can scry 2.
Unsummon.
We can unsummon. Now we have to figure out how to alt them with it.
There's probably some way to set up an engine here where you mill there's probably some comes into play, mill someone for 1 black creature you could find to really get the whole thing going.
Yeah, you can build Jace out of just black cards.
There you go.
It just turns out. And you can play Jace on top of it. So game 1 to Todd Stevens. That's the Fort Worth area player trying to get that Spot 4 Players Championship. We'll go ahead and look at the sideboards. An impressive display from Todd Stevens. Let's start with John's side. He's down a game. You see cards like Arc, Lightning, Wild Slash, Roast, Rending Volley. He's got a lot of removal. How much does he want to go to here?
Not a whole lot. I think you do want the Wild Slashes. They're an efficient answer to Jace. But I think there's a risk of having too much removal. A card I really like in this matchup is Yusova Dragonclaw. It's very prohibitive for Nantuko Husk to be playing against that card because the Husk can sack itself. So Melissari can just target that, take it, sack it, and the Nantuko Husk is off the table. So I think that card's very good here. I can also get behind Sarkin. It's a little bit of removal, and it's a little bit of flying, and it's a little bit of pressure. And Melissari's kind of in the mood for all those kind of effects in this matchup. But I think the Yusovas, the Wild Slashes, and maybe the Planeswalker are going to be where he goes. All
right, now on Todd's side, he has some interesting sideboard options. For starters, if he's playing against a red deck, he could go toward Jotty Offshoot. It gains some life. He has Murderous Cut, which if someone's going to all in on a creature, that seems very strong. He also has Dispel, which is an option against Titan Strength, Teamer Battle Rage, Become Immense. I can't imagine he wants all of this. He needs to be a combo deck at the heart of it, but what kind of disruption can he go toward?
I honestly think he can go to all 11 cards here, and he can cut the Rally the Ancestors out of the deck and just become a value control deck. Still with Collected Company because that's where he can get the lion's share of his power from. But I think if you cut the rallies and shave out some of the inefficient setup creatures, he can bring in all 11 of those cards and just become a different deck.
Yeah, well, we did see last game when Todd had 2 copies of Collected Company, he didn't need Rally to win. At the same time, it doesn't actually seem like he has enough time to build up a good graveyard for Rally of the Ancestors. I mean, Melissari can threaten lethal on turn 3, turn 4. Todd mills himself, but not quick enough for that.
I feel like in this matchup, Rally Ancestors is likely to be powerful in games where Stevens is already ahead. He's traded a bunch. The game's gone on for a long time. He's not under that much pressure, and he can set up a big rally. If I'm Stevens, I'm not worried about winning those kind of games. I'm worried about winning the games where Melissari gets off to a good start. My draw is a little bit on the clunky side, and it takes me too long to defend myself. So I do want all of these cards. I think the cuts, the offshoots, and the dispels are so good, both against Melissari's general plan of attack with red and green creatures and the combo kill element of the deck. And I think that Stevens can win the game in other ways that do not involve Rally of the Ancestors.
Certainly, it's interesting when you look at last game. It's not that Todd, once Todd he had a turn where he went to 5. He took a ton of damage off a Teamer Battle Rage. But after that turn, you never felt like the win was in jeopardy. It's, Melissari used all the spells, got him low, but there was no finishing him off.
Well, I think there was a couple turns there. There was a window where Melissari could have comboed out with Teamer Battle Rage and become immense. But Stevens did a very good job of shutting the door on any other out. It's hard game 1 for a lot of decks to be able to beat that setup. It's mana efficient, and the landfall decks and the Atarka's command decks are so good at going wide that it's hard to beat it by blocking. But Stevens did a good job of cutting everything else off.
Now, we've talked about Todd Stevens, who is trying to make a chase for the points championship. Now, remember, outside of the at-large leaders for the Players' Championship, the last player to get in will be someone through the Season 4 Invitational. Remember, at each of our invitationals during the year, the player gets an invite to the Players' Championship and also gets a token in their likeness. The most recent of that was Alex Bestecki, the winner of our Season 3 Invitational in New Jersey. He was victorious with Grixis Delver with a complete comeback victory over Stephen Mann in the finals, and a press and finish netted him a Germ token, which right now you get here for all Open Series players, receive a copy. All 5K Premier IQ players get a copy. And if you can't make it out to any of those tournaments, you too can own one of these by placing an order at Star City Games of at least $5.
And this is available throughout Season 4.
On board for Game 2, though, Melissari will be on the play. But he'll be on the mulligan. And with these red-green landfall decks, because they have a combo finish to them, I would think that they actually are better at mulliganing than some more burn or red deck win style archetypes.
Well, the issue here with the mulligans is there's no dragon fodders, there's no Hordeling Outbursts in the landfall deck. That's been replaced by threats like Snapping Gnarlid and Scythe Leopard. So when you mulligan, you are very vulnerable to just removal spells breaking up too much of your action and stranding you with a hand of pump spells.
Yeah. And there is pressure on him to have pump spells in this matchup because Todd Stevens is one of the few decks in the format that is 20+ creatures. It seems like when John has a Scythe Leopard in play, if he doesn't have an extra pump spell for it, it's very hard for it to deal damage.
And a lot of his creatures are good at blocking. You have Nantuko Husk, you have DC's Faithful, you have cards like Elvish Visionary and Soulport Cutthroat that are giving him value off of chump blocks or off of double blocks. So it's very important for Melissari to have the pump spells to finish off the game, because winning by conventional combat is going to be challenging.
All right, well, we are underway. Todd Stevens has 7 cards on the draw. John was 6 on the play, but he scried to the top. No 1-drop for John, but he's going to have a creature on turn 2, it looks like. Perhaps a Snapping Gnarlid again. At 3/3, it's a pretty good rate, though Todd does have available blockers for it. As you mentioned, cards like Elvish Visionary, DC's Faithful, even to a point, Catacomb Sifter is a great blocker.
Yep, he's got a bunch of them.
And it's not going to be Gnarlid. It is a face-up Den Protector as the turn 2 play for Melissari.
This is another defining feature of the landfall deck, is the presence of Den Protector. A lot of good stuff going on here. It's good in just late game scenarios, give the deck a little bit of staying power, recurring certain pump spells. Also, Den Protector is a fine thing to be pumping because of the can't be blocked text.
Play from Stevens was Zulaport Cutthroat. John will Wild Slash it and swing in with Den Protector. So Todd up to 20 when off the death trigger, but then down to 18 on the attack. Now, that's a lot of respect to kill that straight out. It's not as though Zulaport Cutthroat could have actually blocked that turn, but I think the life gain may just be enough that he needs to be killed.
Yeah, I think Melissari is basically counting on avoiding most of Stevens' creatures here with pump spells, and Zulaport Cutthroat is a card that's productive for Stevens even if he can't block.
Not much makes sense. We go back to Stevens. Has all 3 colors of Sultai set up off basic lands right now. He's still at a healthy 18, and he'll just pass the turn. Curious here. Now, I would assume he has a creature, but post-board he does have a lot of cards he can actually leave up.
Number of removal spells. Remember, he's got Murderous Cut. He's also got Dispel. These are good sideboard cards. And with the texture of Melissari's hand, it's going to be very hard for him to beat one removal spell because the rest of his hand is just pump.
Looks like this is a split sleeve being replaced on Melissari's side. Yeah, and without pump, I mean, a 2-1 does not represent much of a clock. Stevens can just take these hits for a while. Another land from Melissari. He'll swing with Den Protector, just for 2.
A lot of patience here. I think that a lot of players in that spot would have felt the need to try to do something with Titan Strength because he needs to scry for valuable cards, but looks like Melissari is respecting the possibility of Stevens having a removal spell, just chipping away here, hoping that Stevens taps out for something and he can land a flurry of pump spells.
Both players just going to trade some land drops. We're going to go to Melissari's 5th turn. Currently, the remaining cards in Melissari's hand are a Titan Strength and an Atarka's Command.
I'm a little surprised to see Melissari sack these fetch lands. I understand he's flooding out a little bit, wants to thin the deck, but having extra lands in play makes the landfall threat so much better.
Yeah, he is a landfall deck, and the draw was become immense. So now we're getting to 12 points of pump in Melissari's hand. We need to start thinking about possible combo kills.
Yeah, I think Melissari there is going to pass. He's hoping to see Collected Company inside of combat. Stevenson cooperate.
What heads up play? Because normally you think, hey, Collected Company to ambush this Den Protector is great, but good patience on Steven's side, leaving up removal, leaving up kill spells. He's willing to take 2 damage and then end step Collected Company.
Yeah, I mean, Melissari is not casting any creatures, and so his hand has to be either lands, which Stevens doesn't care about, or spells, in which case he really needs to hang back.
Big miss for Todd Stevens. Collected Company only hitting 1 creature. The only creature hit was Elvish Visionary.
And that's a painful miss there, too, because I think Stevens was really hoping to find a 3-power creature there that will force Melissari to initiate the action with a pump spell, and then Stevens can respond appropriately. As it stands, Melissari still gets to keep chipping on in with this Den Protector.
Yeah, you're right. He still can't block. So now Steven's going to have to use some of his own mana. It's going to be Nantuko Husk. That is a good enough blocker for Den Protector. And with 2 mana up, Stevens is actually, now that he's filled up his graveyard, still able to leave up both Murderous Cut and Dispel if he has them.
I think this is going to force the hand on some pump spells here from Melissari.
He may not get a better turn than right now. Here's Den Protector, and yeah, Melissari, he's going to Titan Strength before blocks, and the fight is going to begin. So here is the 5-2. Now, if he was going to Titan Strength this turn, is there a chance he would have wanted to make that play during upkeep so he'd have better control?
Yes, I would have Titan Strength on the upkeep.
It's only 5 damage right now, which is a fair amount, but still forces the action on John to make lethal. And now we may see a play. Here's an attempt at Become Immense. That will put Den Protector up to 11. Not lethal, but very close. And Todd will go to 1. The last card in John's hand, I believe, is Atarka's Command. If that's true, John should be able to finish this out.
Yeah, he doesn't need to really do anything. I mean, the risk is Stevens draws a Dispel. He can still block on the table with Nantuko Husk. So I think personally that Melissari should have gone for the kill there. You would have seen Dispel at some point in that sequence.
It would have hit the Become Immense at something, probably.
Yep. And you are now risking Stevens drawing a counterspell. Stevens can block the Den Protector on the table with the Nantuko Husk, and if he draws a counterspell, there's no backup plan.
Right, you don't have a way to get the damage across. Stevens will play Catacomb Sifter. Now, one point of note, you talked about the possibility that he would side out some Rally the Ancestors. Stevens does have 2 copies of Rally in his hand, so I don't think he's gone for that line.
Yeah, it just depends on how he wants to address the matchup here. I think the 11 cards he has access to in his sideboard are so good, and that Rally is more of a win more card in the matchup that I would prefer for more cheap resistance.
I actually am interested in card Jati Offshoot, the 0-3, and actually just how good it is in this matchup. I mean, I get that against a red deck, 0-3s that gain life, I'm signing up for, but this Red Green Landfall is a weird one. Todd is going to swing for 3. Now he'll play Sidisi's Faithful. That's the 0-4 with Exploit. It'll sack itself to bounce Den Protector, and John will go for the kill. Atarka's Command. No Dispel from Todd, and we are on to game 3.
Now I really want to see how much of Stevens' sideboard he's brought in here. Because you saw rallies, you saw a lot of the game 1 cards. Didn't look like there was heavy sideboarding done. But if I'm in Stevens' seat, I want 11.
Yeah, and that's got to be we'll see how Stevens can bounce back here. Emotionally, that can be a really tough loss. You're playing against someone who was on a 6-card hand. His only play was Den Protector. He had to swing a naked 2-1 for 3 or 4 turns. That feels when you play matches and you're on the spot like Todd's, that feels like the kind of game that you're supposed to win.
He has numerous copies of the signature card in his hand.
Yeah.
He has Nantuko Husk, Elvish Visionary. He cast a Collected Company. It felt like he was kind of doing his stuff there.
Right.
Against an opponent who brought very little to the table.
So you think about that and you say, man, my Collected Company really, really bricked for me. That can be a hard one, at least emotionally, to come back from. Fortunately for Todd, he had game 1, so he still has a chance to win this match. But, he'll really have to recenter here and not let that one get to him.
Yep. And there's so many different paths he can take with the sideboard here as well. I'm really intrigued to see how this third game plays out, because if he really values keeping his combo intact, he has to sideboard light because there's only so much wiggle room. If he thinks he can win the value game, then he can go pretty heavy with the way that he sideboards.
Players, and Melissari to a point is also re-sideboarding here a bit. So we talked about there's 3 events remaining as Todd Stevens grinds toward the Players' Championship. Now remember, next weekend there's no Star City Open, and that's because Star City is moving to Grand Prix Atlanta, which we'll be hosting. That is now coming up. It is next weekend, November 13th through 15th. This is Battle for Zendikar sealed. So if you sign up for the main event, we have that going on. That's going to be sealed. We have the 3-day Commander celebration if you are into Commander. Also, maybe sealed, not your event, but you have other constructed formats. We have the 3-day Infinite Challenge badge. Attend any way you want, no matter which way you do. We are giving away this playmat for the event. That's the artwork of Seek the Wilds, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Beautiful artwork here. We have sealed pools signed up also. Lots of options for the event. We have regular registration. We have the premium upgrade and the VIP. Tons of things going on this weekend. You see playmats, water bottles, booster packs, pins for the event, as well as trading cards of your favorite SCG Live commentators. Sign up. You can get Battle for Zendikar, full art sets of basic lands, as well as the exclusive Seek the Wild pin, given to anyone who wins a last chance qualifier and for everyone who competes in the Sunday Super Series.
Lots of opportunity to get a 25 full art basic land set, one of each artwork. Also opportunities to get exclusive Seek the Wild pins.
All right, well, for the event, we have our guest of honor. That's John Avon. He'll be part of our artist alley of artists there ready to sign your cards. Other players, we have Pete Ventner, Clint Clearly, Jason Engel, Anthony Palumbo, and Winona Nelson, all present at the event.
Lots of opportunities to get your card signed. Remember, the lines are going to be very long, especially for John Avon, who does not do a lot of public appearances, especially stateside.
All right, we also have a lot of seminars and meet and greets this weekend. On Friday, we have first our Commander versus cast. They will all be in attendance. We have Judge Conference as well with some SCG writers. You see the list of players there. Also, some of your favorite SCG commentators will be there on Friday. Come by and say hi. Patrick and Cedric both there, as well as myself. I will be there actually competing in the event as you two cast it.
Very exciting. Hopefully, we'll get you in the feature match area at some point over the weekend.
All right, well, register today. Remember, that's coming up next weekend. StarCityGames.com/Grand Prix Atlanta. We go to Game 3. Todd Stevens, he's on the play with 4-color rally facing off against John Melissari's Red-Green Landfall. At 9-3, this match is for elimination. This game will decide it. The turn 1 play from John is going to be Scythe Leopard. Both players have kept on 7 cards this time. For Todd, it'll be Elvish Visionary as he builds a board and hopefully a graveyard at some point here.
Melissari went back and did a lot of sideboarding. Makes a lot of sense here, as he has a lot of threats that are much better on the play than on the draw.
For Todd, it just really, if he's kept in the rallies, this is just the standard plan of you do things like chump block, you sacrifice creatures, you buy time until one of your rallies is lethal.
So Melissari has brought in a copy of Outpost Siege out of the board. That's a card I'm skeptical of in the matchup. I don't think Melissari has an edge going late, even drawing 2 cards a turn versus Stevens' 1.
Yeah, well, we did see Game 1. Stevens had multiple Planeswalker flips. In that situation, an extra card won't do much. For Melissari, his turn 2 play is a land and a Monastery Swift Spear. They'll swing in, and you see Stevens at the ready to go ahead and chump block with Elvish Visionary. He prevents the 2 off Scythe Leopard, takes 1 off Swift Spear. and goes down to 17. Third fetch land cracked for him, down to 16 as well. But building a graveyard here.
Melissari also appears to have brought in Arc Lightnings out of the board, so a lot more removal here in Game 3.
Well, Arc Lightning certainly can be a game changer, depending on the kind of creatures Todd has in play.
Yeah, it's good against some of the stuff and not against others. There is enough 1 and 2 toughness creatures in Steven's deck where he's going to get the sweet spot of, kill your Jace and your Elvish Visionary, kill your Zulaport, Cutthroat, and something else.
It's going to be Sidisi's Faithful for Todd on an empty board, so that's just going to be an unsummon. Or just going to be a blocker, as it turns out.
Looks like I think Stevens is just going to be looking to block here.
Plays Elvish Visionary, passes the turn, draws a card. Now, he does have 2 copies of Zulaport Cutthroat in hand. So, as he builds up a chump blockers and a graveyard, Zulaport Cutthroats are the kind of cards that he wants to play and block for get in the graveyard for that eventual rally.
Right.
It and Nantuko Husk are the key pieces. We go back over to Melissari. Fetch land and immediately cracks it. That brings Scythe Leopard up to a 3/3. Big things could be afoot. Todd Stevens is tapped out. He's cracking the fetch land pre-combat. That's got to be a concern for Todd.
Well, right now, Melissari can Arc Lightning the Visionary for 1 and the Faithful for 2. That means that Stevens has to choose between either taking the full shot of 5 or chump blocking with the Faithful. The counter to that is Stevens going to say take it, and then Melissari doesn't have any way to punch through the 0-4 the next turn. So I think Melissari is making this attack, hoping that the Faithful goes in front of the Leopard, and then Arc Lightning takes care of everything. But if he does it preemptively, Stevens can say no blocks, I'll take 5.
So if he wanted to make this line, I'm surprised that he cracked the fetch land already. I mean, right, because now when Todd makes the block here, well, John's already used that resource. Maybe he doesn't. He's kind of priced into using Arc Lightning now.
I think he was going to use Arc Lightning this turn no matter what.
Right, so it'll be 1 to see. So he uses Arc Lightning to take care of the 2 creatures. He got 1 damage in off the Monastery Swift Spear.
So he essentially costs himself 1 point this way to ensure that the Faithful was in the graveyard as opposed to being in play down the line. And because Melissari's hand is not that flush with pump spells, the 0-4 is a good blocker, so it makes sense for Melissari to give up a little bit of equity to make sure it's off the table.
Elvish Visionary was a play for Todd Stevens. He misses the 4th land, and we pass back to John Melissari. Todd is getting lower and lower on life points. He did draw a 3rd copy of Zulaport Cutthroat. It is one of the good cards here, but he has a few too many of them at the moment.
Not enough mana, and also not enough black mana to get everything into play all at once.
Yeah, he would need another swamp to start double casting them. On John's turn, here's land 4. He'll play Outpost Siege. This is the card you mentioned.
Good in this spot. Game's slow. Stevens is trying to trade a lot, so Outpost Siege has the potential to be pretty good here.
Yeah, pair of 2/2 swing in. We'll see if Todd Stevens wants to chump block. Now, is there an argument if he is going to start playing Zulaport Cutthroats to maybe keep the Elvish Visionary around for a turn?
He can kind of cash in this Visionary for 3 points of damage anytime he wants to. I guess with Outpost Siege, it's possible Melissari gets more looks at removal spells, and Stevens wants to ensure that he gets his chump block in and saves 3 points. But I feel like with the hand that Stevens has, he kind of needs to build up a critical mass of stuff in play to make any inroads on the board. So I'm probably just taking this hit. It's painful.
Yeah. It looks like Murderous Cut will take care of Scythe Leopard.
So I think this makes a no blocks a no-brainer. If Stevens draws a black source of mana and can play 2 Cutthroats next turn, he starts clawing back in a little bit. The board starts getting gummed up. He gains a couple points of life here and there. It's a way to come back in.
Well, it wasn't a black source. It was another black card. He drew another Murderous Cut. You're right. He would love a second swamp here. He has far too many black cards in hand. He will make Zulaport Cutthroat, though. That's a start for him. But no choice but to just pass the turn. Chump blocks buy him time, but he's not accelerating into the late game.
Well, if he keeps chump blocking, it does maybe set him up for a rally for 2, being able to pull him back in.
And an attack from Elvish Visionary there from Todd. That may cost him. You see, the Outpost Siege gets a Wild Slash. So now Slash gets to take care of Zulaport Cutthroat. Stevens gains 1. And now with the Visionary tapped from attacking, Stevens does not have a blocker at the ready.
Yeah, that felt a little too aggressive there.
And will John go for this? He could try to go for a kill here. We'll see. Here's Abbot of Carroll Keep. That flips Den Protector off the top. John could cast that this turn. You see he makes a land drop, and yeah, he'll just cast the 2/1 and attack for 2 with Swift Spear. So Stevens down to 11.
And I like this line of play here from Melissari. He could have gone for broke here and tried to resolve the Become Immense, but with Stevens floundering on mana and Melissari putting a lot of threats into play, it's likely Melissari will get an opportunity to resolve this Become Immense at some other point. Also, getting a Den Protector into play against Stevens' deck is very valuable given the problem Stevens has blocking it, as we saw in the last game.
Now, Stevens did finally hit his land here. It's Windswept Teeth. The one thing about Windswept Teeth you should know is that it cannot get black mana, which is really the color he'd like it to do. But it's a land nonetheless.
The fetch lands cannot get a mana of the shared enemy color.
All right, so we'll have to settle for Canopy Vista. That is the second white source, however. If he can get a Nantuko Husk or a Sack Owl in play, then a rally for 2 could be really strong from Todd Stevens. Question is whether or not he'll have the life points to do it. And he's setting up for it. You see here, that's Nantuko Husk. Leaves up Dispel. Fetch land got up Outpost Siege. The draw for the turn was Atarka's Command.
And Atarka's Command is pretty much perfect here, as that will certainly force the issue on the Dispel in Stevens' hand, and then Become Immense can wrap it up.
Yeah, this may be too much, too little, too late for Todd Stevens. Nantuko Husk is the card he wants, but he's taking a lot of damage with these extra cards. And here's a swing of the team. Become Immense on Den Protector. I can't imagine Todd has an option of letting this resolve.
And now if he wants to block the Den Protector, he has to sacrifice the Visionary in front of this.
Yeah. So he will go ahead and dispel the Become Immense.
So now I believe that Become Immense will be a kill here.
Or Atarka's Command.
Excuse me, Atarka's Command.
Does a lot of work. Creatures will all get up to 3 power or more.
Yeah, I think that Melissari would have been better served opening on Atarka's Command. That would have forced the issue the same way on either Nantuko Husk pumping or casting Dispel, and then Become Immense would be lethal.
I'm a little surprised that John didn't just cast. If he just cast Atarka's Command before blocks there, then Nantuko Husk would not have been able to block Den Protector.
Right, that's where I would have led it. It's also better against the Dispel, because then the Become Immense just resolves. I think Melissari has enough left over in his hand, though, that it shouldn't be too much of a concern. His hand looks, I think it's another Become Immense and another Atarka's Command.
So he's not going to use the Atarka's Command yet. He's just going to deal 2 damage off the Monastery Swift Spear.
Oh, excuse me, it's another Leopard, not a Become Immense.
Play Scythe Leopard. So Stevens still alive after that turn.
Although based on body language, I don't think he found what he was looking for. But with the way everything got sequenced there, if Stevens found Rally, I believe he would be right back in this.
Yeah, he's looking for Rally the Ancestors. He has a lot of Cutthroats still in hand. You're right, though. He would need a Rally to still be alive at the moment. So he'll play Zulaport Cutthroat. Has land, Cutthroat, and 1 more card in hand. I believe it's land, Cutthroat, Murderous Cut. Upkeep, John will go ahead and sack that land. It'll pump Scythe Leopard.
Wants to thin out a little bit out in front of his Outpost Siege trigger.
Yeah, and because he's almost certain to sack that anyway to pump Scythe Leopard, it's pretty free to do it during upkeep.
I like the sequencing.
Outpost Siege shows Atarka's Command. Another land for Scythe Leopard. If it's 2 Atarka's Commands, that's got to be lethal here.
Yeah. Asking a lot to get out of this.
And here's the swing. Todd will try to stay alive, but I doubt he can do it. Blocks 2 creatures. Scythe Leopard already 3 power. If that's 3 damage and John has 2 Atarka's Commands, that's going to be game.
And not a whole lot that he has to respect here. So I suppose he's allowing all this to trigger? I'm not sure.
I don't understand that. If he casts Atarka's Command, the prowess triggers just eats Todd's board.
And he also gains some life for his trouble here as well. I suppose he can respond to the life gain by Atarka's Command for Skullcrack And then
3 damage, no life gain. That's still lethal. So John Melissari is going to take that one in 3 over Todd Stevens. Outpost Siege. It was a bold sideboard plan, one that we weren't certain would work, but against a hand that was awkward from Todd, those extra cards did pay off.